There's a story about how one cold winter evening, that is, a priest was walking down some city blocks, and as he was walking down, walking on the sidewalk, all of a sudden this masked man came out of an alley, and he had a gun that was pointed at him, and he demanded that the priest give him his wallet. And of course the priest was terrified, and his hands were shaking. But as he undid his coat and he exposed his collar, that is, all of a sudden the robbers seemed to have a change of heart. That is, he just kind of sighed and said, a priest. He said, I can't rob a priest. And so the priest was so happy. He was so relieved. And so he said to the man, "Oh, thank you so much." And then he thought, why don't you come? I'll buy you a beer, and then you and I can just talk. And so the man said, "Well, I would, Father, but I gave up drinking for Lent." Didn't give up robbing, but drinking. All of us, hopefully at this point, are well underway with the things that we perhaps have given up, or the extra things that we want to do during Lent, or perhaps our fasting and our abstinence, that is, we're already at, believe it or not, the second Sunday of Lent. But I think we must remind ourselves what the purpose is of these extra things that we do, or the things that we give up. That is, ultimately, these things are supposed to help us change. That is, we all want, or the goal for us all in any season of Lent, is to become a better person. That is, a more Christ-like person, to grow in our intimacy with God. That is really what the goal is. And so all these things, these extra things we do, or the things we give up, if they don't accomplish that, then perhaps we didn't do things the way that we should. On this, also, the second Sunday of Lent, we always hear about the Transfiguration. That is, we hear how our Lord took Peter, James, and John up a high mountain, and there he was transfigured before them. But perhaps the question we can ask ourselves in regard to that is, why did our Lord do that? What was the purpose? Certainly, for one, it was probably to show them and us that he is exactly who he claimed he was. That is, that he is the Son of God, and he is divine also. He's not just a man, but he's divine also. That is, so he wanted to prove that. But also, I think it was to have an effect on them, to influence them to be transformed, or to be transfigured also. That is, that was done for us, not just them, but for all of us, to help us and inspire us to transfigure ourselves into more Christ-like people also. And that is really what the goal of Lent is. And so at the end, that is, at the end of Lent and come Easter, hopefully we're all just better people, better Christians, more kind, more loving, more generous. That is really what the goal is all. But I think to accomplish this goal, that is, we have to do something out of the ordinary too. That is, Peter, James, and John climbed up a high mountain. It probably had to, if it was high, as we're told it probably wasn't a very easy mountain to climb. But because they did, and because they accompanied and followed our Lord also, that is, they had something terrific happen. And so I think what our call is to find that one thing in the season of Lent that would be out of the ordinary for us. Like For instance, if we only come to Mass on Sunday, perhaps we can come once or twice or on occasion during a weekday Mass also. Or perhaps we can, of course, we have our Stations of the Cross as well every Friday at 5:30. Perhaps if we haven't gone to confession in quite some time, that would be a good time to go also. Or perhaps, of course, as I announced, our bishop, Bishop Caggiano, is coming to say not only the 4:30 Mass on Saturday, March 9th, but then he's going to give a Lenten presentation that same evening. And so that would be our mountain to climb, or something unusual that we don't usually do. Or perhaps we have a great men's group and a great women's group also, and I speak not only of Cornerstone, but the Knights of Columbus that are in our parish. They're having they're inviting all the men of our parish on Monday, March 4th. And so if you can come down and hear about the things that the Knights do, and perhaps that could be something unusual that you can come to also. Or the Women of St. Gregory as well do all kinds of wonderful charitable things, not only for our parish, but even outside the parish also. And so maybe that would be something worthwhile to check out also. Or perhaps we can attempt to try to bring someone home, that is, to bring someone back to Christ and His church during this Lent also. That would be a great and worthwhile thing, not only for us to do, but for that person also. But I think what Lent calls us to do is to find that unusual thing, to take that extra step or do that something that we don't usually or normally do, and that could be our own little mountain to climb, and then something terrific can happen to us also. There's a South African golfer named Retief Goosen. Some of you probably heard of him. I'm not a big golf person, but he would be in his 50s now. But what you don't know about him, when he was young, he had a very bad temper. That is, he couldn't go even a few rounds of golf without breaking several of his clubs. It's probably part of the reason why I don't play golf, because I'd probably be in that category also. But yeah, he would have a terrible temper, and his parents weren't too happy about this also. But then, when he was in his late teens, while on the golf course, he was actually struck by lightning. Struck so bad that it burned the clothes off his body. It disintegrated his shoes, and his watch was actually just like melted to his wrist also. And he had to spend 2 months in the hospital. But over those 2 months, that bad temper kind of just drained away, and he became very calm and very much more at peace. And so he brought that peace and calm back into his golf game, and he became known as then one of the most peaceful and calm players under pressure. And he developed the nickname Iceman because of his coolness. He was so cool under pressure. And in an interview with his parents actually thought that was a divine intervention on God's part, that it was all part of God's plan, because it really changed his personality for the better. And isn't that what it's all about for us, too? To get rid of sin, vice, or bad habits that we have. That is, to get rid of that and just become a better person. Now, hopefully we don't have to be struck by lightning, but we do have to be struck by Lent. That is, Lent is the time and the place for us to really become more Christ-like people, to transfigure ourselves into the likeness of Christ. And if you and I can do that, if we can together do that, not only will we have a much better individual life, but parish life also, and truly will together have a very happy Easter also.